everyone, and welcome to our Group 7 presentation. I'm Madison Rodriguez.
I'm Nicole Richardson.
I'm Angela Sagun.
And today we're going to be talking to you guys about DIY SynBio or synthetic biology scientists. And these are also known as biohackers. So you may be wondering, who are biohackers? Biohackers are amateur scientists, students, or hobbyists who are using the similar synthetic biology techniques that professional scientists are using in their own laboratories. However, they do not always have the same access to resources, so they can go one of two ways. They can either purchase their own equipment online, or they can be involved in community-based lab groups. So these scientists can practice anywhere from in their own homes, as shown by this man here looking like he's practicing synthetic biology in his own garage, or in these biology-oriented community labs in general spaces. These types of labs don't discriminate against anyone and allow them to practice biology regardless of academics or social or cultural backgrounds, which is why it's super great for these amateur scientists if that's something that they want to pursue. So anyone is able to purchase genetic engineering material on the internet for prices ranging from $1,000 to there even being kits out there for only $500 that allow you to practice synthetic biology. And along with this equipment, there is a vast bank of bioinformatics and tools available as well. As we had learned in lecture, it is possible to download an entire genome at the very push of a button. Using this equipment is where the term biohackers comes from. So biohacking is the idea of making use of genetic material for a variety of purposes. They can use it for reworking DNA and many other molecular processes, ranging from experimenting with yeast to creating possibly new viruses. This term is similar to the hacking we know from the sense of computers, with this being an important focus on finding out new and clever ways to do things through the processes of synthetic biology that we have learned about. So you may be wondering how it works for these amateur scientists to perform synthetic biology experiments. The regulations regarding practicing synthetic biology vary, whether it is by state or by country. It is usually common for one to need a license in order to practice this type of science. However, there is currently no adaptation for amateur-specific licenses for those who have not gone through that academic route that gets them to having a degree in biology and stuff like that. In countries other than the US, if there's a community-based DIY bio lab that wants to apply directly for a license, they are able to do that. But in the US, there's little regulation for synthetic biology, so we haven't adapted anything like that, or we don't have anything like that in place. There was, however, an ethics code that was created in 2011 by the North American Congress. It was non-legally binding, and it was meant to adopt safe practices while still allowing these scientists to conduct synthetic biology. However, the regulatory system focuses more on the products being made rather than the science behind them, which is the reason for patents. So patents are what prohibit these DIY biologists from directly having access to certain materials or products because there's a legal block that they may not have the resources or the knowledge of how to get past because they are, again, amateur scientists. And this is all important and relevant information to what role a DIY biologist plays within this administration of synthetic biology. So why are these DIY scientists interested in synthetic biology? This is because there is a genuine love for science, and this science has become a hobby to many of these scientists. So they pursue it because there is a significant love for science, which means that there's a great desire to pursue further knowledge and understanding of the world around us. Because of this pursuit, there's a great possibility that something groundbreaking could be discovered, especially if someone who may be an amateur in terms of science is able to acquire the resources and knowledges to create a possibly life-changing idea, which is why these DIY biologists love the idea of DIY science, as they can explore these different ideas and they don't have as much restrictions which allow them to really experiment and explore new things. And this can expand the possibilities of synthetic biology to help better the world around us because it does not limit to those who just have the ability to gain a proper education and have the proper resources at their disposal. DIY scientists are also interested in synthetic biology because it helps find a sense of community among those who have similar interests, especially within those who are also amateurs and are just finding their way in the world of synthetic biology. Another major interest in this type of science is that there is a great possibility of economic gain, and this is in the term of entrepreneurship. So normal people will be able to profit upon their ideas and the things that they are creating. I'm going to discuss this further in an example right here. So we're going to be talking a bit about SynBio, which I know we discussed in lecture, but it's super important in the world of DIY synthetic biology, so I wanted to bring it up again. So SynBio is a company that provides both funding and educational opportunities to these amateur scientists or blossoming companies that have come from these amateur scientists having an idea. So they provide over $250,000 to different companies in funding, lab space, and a huge network of people to grow their businesses. These scientists are able to engage with founders and investors, and they're able to turn their products into real financial gain, which has allowed for the great return of these ideas and these beautiful ideas into over a $3.4 billion company. This amount of money produced by these DIY scientists can be a great boost for the economy, as well as being able to put it back into DIY biology for those people who are unable to have the resources to have the technology and have the education to pursue their ideas. So there are over about 159 companies that have come from this, and I'm going to talk about one real quick. And they are called Pembient, and they came from Seattle, Washington, and they went through SynBio and had the resources that SynBio gave them to create their company. And what their idea is an artificial horn created from certain protein fibers, and it was meant to mimic that of a rhino horn or elephant ivory, which are used commonly by designers and carvers, but which also harm the animals in that you're taking that from them, which is dangerous. So this further allows the conservation of these animals from poachers to be bettered. And they are working to curb the illegal trade of these horns, as well as protect these animals from dangerous poachers, because these animals are becoming very endangered and almost close to extinct. So this is a clear example of how DIY scientists use synthetic biology to better the world around them. In this case, they're helping out animals, which I assume all of you agree is a great thing. And how companies like SynBio and the support that they provide amateur companies and amateur scientists like this is amazing, and how it can grow into something much bigger that can really better the world. And Nicole is going to take you through another one of the companies that went through SynBio as well.
Okay, so another example of a company that is based on synthetic biology is SynBio. SynBio is a company funded by SynBio and is based in California. And what they do is they make red blood cells the same way our body does, but just in a lab. Although making blood outside of the body has been possible for a few decades, SynBio is able to use their technology to produce artificial blood on a commercial scale. Currently, we only have donors to rely on, which causes many complications due to things such as different blood types, pathogens donors carry, and the fact that there's not enough blood donated to meet worldwide demands. With SynBio's commercialized production of blood, not only will there be more blood available, but it is pathogen-free, toxin-free, lasts longer in the body, and matches all blood types. Next slide, please. DIY biologists are very intrinsically driven since they practice biosynthesis for a hobby because they enjoy it. They get fulfillment by being able to create a community around what they love to do. They also get fulfillment by making a difference in their communities. No matter what that difference is, reducing their carbon footprint by making their own glowing plant to help them read in the dark, saving animals' lives by making synthetic horn and ivory to reduce poaching, or making a living off being an entrepreneur of a biohacking company. Next slide, please. In terms of extrinsic value, DIY biologists also practice biohacking to help other people. Biohackers help the public in many ways, including making medical necessities more accessible to the public, like SynBio has with their synthetic blood, combating climate change with the development of environment-saving technologies such as bacteria with the ability to degrade plastic, like discussed in lecture, or engineering ways to ensure the food security of a growing population being met with the challenge of the reduction of natural resources, like finless foods who make synthetic fish. Next slide. So you may be asking yourself, why should I, a government official on a presidential commission for synthetic biology, care about these people and their hobbies? Well, since synthetic biology could be the answer to some of the most pressing issues we face as a society today, like the cure for cancer, climate change, etc., it would be most beneficial to have as many perspectives as possible when tackling these problems. This will only be provided by people with many different backgrounds and perspectives, which is where DIY biologists come in. Since there is no set criteria that needs to be met to become a DIY biologist, they make this synthetic biology field very diverse. And as Darwin once said, diversity is crucial to solving problems. Plus, the more people working to solve these problems, the faster and more efficiently they get solved. Next slide. Another reason you should support biohackers is because the economic value Madison mentioned. DIY biologists are funded by the public and good for the economy because anyone has the opportunity to invest in the biosynthetic companies. Because biohackers do not have to rely or compete for government funding, this means that the public can prioritize what companies get money and therefore the ideas that come to fruition. This takes the politics out of funding and puts the people's needs first. This can provide a stop to the exploitation of people who depend on things like insulin and can prioritize what the people need most, like food security and medical advances.
Now that we've explained why biohackers should be supported, we want to share what are some possible outcomes that biohackers hope to gain. One of the main outcomes is not to have restrictions that prohibit them from practicing at-home science, because that would be taking away from what they enjoy. We believe that we deserve to be able to have an education because it will lead them to be safer when conducting their experiments and lessen the worry of people conducting such experiments. We also believe that they should have access to technology and have public labs in order for them to conduct their experiments. The reason being is because while they have access to better technology and public labs, they will have what is necessary for them to conduct their experiments and also be safe at the same time. Finally, biohackers should not be proclaimed as bad people. The media constantly refers to biohackers as unreliable and dangerous people because they are simply not professionals. However, people fail to realize that actual organizations tend to use the help of biohackers. Next slide, please. This slide is an example of SynBiologists who have faced consequences because of his actions of experimenting on himself. Aaron Trewick lived life as a spectacle with all cameras rolling. So for those who knew him, it wasn't surprising that his death was shrouded in spectacle and controversial. At just 28, Trewick was among the most famous figures in the world of biohacking. The grandiose CEO of a tiny company called Ascendance Biomedical, whose goal was to develop and test a new gene therapies without the expense and rigor of clinical trials or the oversight of the FDA. Trewick wanted to cure cancer, herpes, HIV, and even aging, and he wanted to do it without having to deal with the rules and safety precautions of regulatories and industry standards. In February 2018, Trewick injected into his bare left by an experimental herpes treatment developed by his company. Only a couple months after injecting himself with this treatment, he was found dead, and many people believe that the reason he died was because he experimented on himself. Next slide, please. Some alternatives and compromises that we would be willing to agree to and also be safe at the same time are having community labs. We believe that community labs would be much easier for biohackers to group together and at the same time be supervised by professionals. Being supervised will allow them to experiment all they want while with the community of lab biohackers within the community they can have technology and be supervised while being safe. This compromise will resolve the issue in which people argue that biohackers are not supervised and therefore cannot be trusted. We hope that this compromise will fix that in order to keep synthetic biology going. Another major issue that people have is synbiologists tend to experiment on themselves, as we just saw in the previous slide. The founder of Ascendance Biomedical, Aaron Trewick, experimented on himself and injected himself with what he hoped was the herpes treatment. Next slide, please. This eventually led to his death, which caused many people to be skeptical about SynBio. However, we have found a solution. We believe that if companies were to invest in synbiologists, they will have the necessary resources to conduct their experiments while also testing them before actually using them. Not only will this allow synbiologists to be safer and have more access to money, which will lead to technology, but it may even help people find cures for diseases that have not been found yet. Finally, in order to keep SynBio happening, we believe that supervising them and allowing them to sign a code of ethics would be best and allow people to trust them more. We believe that this will gain many people's trust because of how safe they are, and while being supervised will allow them to do more experience and have a lesser risk of doing something rash that will hurt the environment and even hurt themselves, like Aaron Trewick. Although we have multiple alternatives, we do have recommendations that we would like to see put into action. Our main recommendations that we feel are necessary are creating a code of conduct. We believe that this will help and be effective, but because by signing the code of conduct, they will be held responsible for what they do and be punished if it is wrong. We also recommend that people begin to recognize synbiologists and invest in their research. We believe that it will be safer and also allows for scientists to do what they love and someday find research that will change the world. Here, next slide, please. Sorry. Here are more recommendations that we have and believe should be put into action in order for synbiologists to continue their research. We believe that there should be a law that allows for them to continue their research, but also have safe protocols. We believe that the code of conduct will allow them to be more trustworthy, allow them to be held accountable for their experiments if it is caused harm to the public, and we encourage professionals to invest or help these at-home scientists, because synbiologists are people who want to become scientists but either do not have access to education or rather do not have the necessary tools to become scientists, which forces them to use parts of other machineries to do their experiments.
In conclusion, DIY biologists play a valuable role within the synthetic biology community. Along with their passion for science, they have the drive to discover ways to benefit the world around them. This type of science should definitely be encouraged, and not only with those who have the resources to become academic biologists just at their fingertips. So this is why our recommendation was to create a binding code of ethics for all DIY scientists to have to abide by. That way, there is transparency within the community to maintain the ethics and the ethical morals while they're still able to practice synthetic biology without extreme restrictions. This is because extreme restrictions getting in the way could have the potential to drive DIY biology underground, which is not ideal and could cause some issues and ethical issues of people not being aware of what is actually being practiced within the synthetic biology community. So we must continue to avoid this. So to avoid this, we must continue to try and work and create a community where those are ethically educated and also held accountable for their actions, which is why we think our recommendation is good. So we want to thank you for watching and coming today to this presentation, and we hope you enjoyed. And here are our sources.